Good evening, everyone. My name is Lucas Alves. I am chairing today's Governance and Policy Committee meeting. A special thank you to Trustee Brad McDonald for the opportunity today. I'd like to call this evening's meeting to order. I'd like to start this meeting with the acknowledgement of our traditional lands and territories.
The land upon which we work, live, and sustain ourselves is the ancestral and treaty lands of the Michizagig Anishinaabe, also known today as the Mississaugas of the Credit, the rightful caretakers and title holders of this land. We also recognize the rich pre-contact history and relationships which include the Anishinaabe and the Ongwe Hongwe.
Since European contact, this land continues to be home to Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples. As responsible community members, we value the diversity, dignity, and worth of all people.
Colonialism displaced and dispossessed Indigenous peoples of their ancestral land
and continues to deny their basic human rights, dignities, and freedoms.
We are committed to learning true history to reconcile, make reparations, and fulfill our treaty obligations to the original peoples and our collective responsibilities to the lands, water, animals, and each other for future generations.
Thank you. We'll be moving on now to the approval of our agenda. The agenda for tonight's meeting has been distributed. Are there any additions, modifications, or questions regarding the agenda? If there are no changes or questions or modifications, may I please have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
Thank
you. Thank you, Trustees B. McDonald and J. Clark. All those in favor? The motion is carried. I will proceed with the agenda as planned. Moving to the declarations of conflict of interest, do we have any to note? Thank you. We will now move on to the approval of the minutes for tonight's agenda. If there are no corrections or comments, may I please have a motion to approve the minutes as presented?
I'll put it on the floor.
Oh, Trustee Bailey, Trustee D. McDonald. Thank you. All those in favor? The minutes are approved as presented. We have no scheduled delegations this evening. We'll move on to the main business of tonight's meeting. The first item on the agenda this evening is staff reports. I understand the first report is regarding the digital citizenship and use of IT resources policy. I will now turn things to you, Chief Information Officer Huron and Superintendent of Innovation and Research Smith. Thank you.
Thank you. And through you, Chair, we are seeking the approval of the committee for the following recommendation. That the use of IT resources policy, policy 82, be repealed, and that the digital citizenship policy, policy 78, be replaced with the updated digital citizenship and use of IT resources policy. Both policies, the use of IT resources and the digital citizenship policies, the older policies had not been updated since 2013. So it's been 11 years, and as we know, there were a lot of technological advances since then. So we were certainly due for an updated and revised policy. Based on environmental scans and recommendations and consultations, we combined both policies. The new revised and updated policy centers our student and provide them a support to be modern learners. As well, we did extensive consultations with staff, with the community, with parents. The draft policy was posted on our website for a period of 2 weeks, and we received feedback through that policy. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Superintendent Smith.
Thank you so much, Antoine, and through you, Chair. We're advancing our educational strategies with the implementation of our digital citizenship and IT use policy, paving the way to deepen our work with EdTech innovation to spearhead advancements in learning technologies in collaboration with LTSS staff. A significant part of our focus is on cultivating digital literacy and citizenship, ensuring both students and educators are proficient in navigating digital landscapes safely and ethically, particularly in environments influenced by AI or artificial intelligence. Our goal is to emphasize critical thinking and responsible engagement with digital tools. In addition to promoting digital literacy and fluency, we're enhancing the curriculum with interactive and immersive technologies such as virtual and augmented reality to create more engaging learning experiences that are affirming of students' intersecting identities. By adopting adaptive learning technologies, including platforms like D2L, we tailor educational experiences to meet the diverse needs of our students. Our careful selection of digital tools aims to expand global collaboration and empower educators with cutting-edge pedagogical tech tools. We're one of the leading boards with this work. Our commitment extends to bridging the digital divide, ensuring equitable access to technology for all students, thereby positioning PDSB as a leader in fostering sustainable technological innovation. This strategic shift lays a robust foundation for ethical technology use within our educational framework, signifying a move towards a culture of innovation, continuous improvement, and forward-thinking leadership that empowers modern learners. By embedding STEM disciplines within our curriculum, underscored by an emphasis on the global competencies or what's called transferable skills, including creativity and problem solving, we are equipping our students with the requisite skills for the future workforce. At this point, we're happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Chief Information Officer Haroon and Superintendent Smith. That was a very welcomed presentation. May I ask someone to please put the recommendation on the floor for approval? Thank you, Trustee Bailey. Seconder? T. McDonald, thank you, sir. I will now open the floor up to discussion. Folks, if you could please raise your hand and wait to be recognized before speaking. Once recognized, if you could state your name and we'll proceed with your comments or questions. Okay, so we'll go online first. Trustee Carla Bailey. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Trustee Els. Thank you for the report. Through you, Chair, I'd like to ask on page 2 of the policy, I just want some clarification on point B, where it says the use of personally owned technology, including personally owned computers and mobile devices when used on board property or when used to access board resources. Inappropriate use of personally owned technology that has a negative impact on the students. My concern right there is, okay, how can you clarify how you can tell somebody how they can use their own technology?
Thank you, Trustee Bailey, and through you, Chair. This refers to connecting to our infrastructure. So we do have a BYOD program, so bring your own device. And so if a student brings their own device or an individual brings their own device and connects to our network, but while connected to our network, if they are connected through the cellular network and they're not using PDSB infrastructure, then we have no visibility and they are not using our IT resources. But if they're using PDSB resources, IT resources, whether it's our network or any of the other technology, then that puts the board in a situation where we are responsible. And so we have to, if they're engaging in cyberbullying or if they're downloading inappropriate or accessing copyrighted material inappropriately or any of that stuff, then using our network, then that is something that this specific point addresses.
Okay, so and I think that needs to be clarified because that only states their personal equipment there. It doesn't mention if they're using the board's resources in any way, shape, or form.
I believe it says when used on board property or when used to access board resources. That is the second half.
Right.
Of the sentence.
It says what, but if they're using their own device with their own data on board property, that's still their own material.
Thank you, Trustee Bailey. We'll take that back and make the. I'm looking at our governance officer. No.
Thank you. If they're proposing excuse me, if a change is being proposed, we could make the change now so that it can be approved this evening. Otherwise, if you take it back, it won't be approved today. It would have to come back to the next meeting.
Yeah.
So, if I may, trustee Bailey, may I ask you to clarify the concern with the actual wording as it's set out in the policy? Because the modification in that actual sentence is the use on board property and connecting to board resources. And that's the restriction on personal use, but your personal device, in general, remains your personal device. But the way the sentence is actually written is the modification of your personal device using board resources.
Thank you for clarifying that, Catherine. But it's how I'm reading it. It states the use of personally owned technology, including personally owned computers and mobile devices, when used on board property or when used to access board resources. It doesn't say and or any of that. It's or. Either or. So even if I'm using my own technology with my own data, but I'm standing on board property, then this is telling me that I'm bound by that. But when you can't hold me accountable for anything when it's my data and my phone.
It's only, only when it's inappropriate use of that.
It doesn't matter if it's an inappropriate use of data. It's still my data and it's still my phone.
Thank you, trustee Bailey. We're just gonna take a minute to just take a quick check here. We're just reviewing something in the document. Just give us one moment.
Yeah.
Chief Information Officer, please.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. So one example, trustee Bailey, would be, let's say somebody has a mobile phone and is on board property and is using their own data, but is taking inappropriate pictures without the permission of the individuals that they're taking pictures of. That is still inappropriate use of the technology. So they're still using their own device. They are intruding on the privacy of the other students or of the staff at the board. So this is why this is worded this way.
But let's say that that same student now is on the board property, or they're using their own device and they're showing inappropriate pictures to their friends.
That would also be, that would still be in non-compliance with the policy because it's inappropriate use of the technology.
But it's their technology to use how they choose. You don't get to govern somebody else's phone.
It's still inappropriate use of technology on board property, which is in contravention of the student code of conduct, because this policy if you see the section on references, it connects with the Education Act, with the student code of conduct, with the employee code of conduct. So it still ties into all these other policies, but and legislation as well.
Thank you for clarifying that. I respectfully disagree. But I'm going to go to the next point. The other point that I have through you, Chair, is personal use under page number 4, section B, number 1 or I, 1. Again, can you clarify for me when you say personal use that is not limited or occasional, what do you mean by that?
Thank you, and through you, Chair. So there may be situations where there could be a mining of, so leveraging the PDSB network to mine Bitcoin, for example, or to inappropriate storage of copyrighted material, hogging resources. So there has to be, for non-board use, occasional use is allowed. So let's say someone on their lunch break wants to pay their phone bill using online banking, and they go in and spend 2 minutes and pay their online bank. That's considered occasional and limited use. But somebody who's trying to mine Bitcoin or download seasons of copyrighted material and storing it on board resources, that is inappropriate use.
Thank you for clarifying.
Thank you very much. Okay, I have, I've been keeping a list here, so I believe trustee B McDonald had his hand up as well, just going in order of hands. So trustee B McDonald, over to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you very much for this update and stuff. And last week, trustee Promoli and I attended presentation at one of my schools with Paul Davis. I don't know if you're familiar with him, talking about internet safety, security, and scared Joe. The notice of motion later in the agenda came from that. And so, some things, the inappropriate uses was certainly discussed, and some of the stuff. So I know, and I don't see it so much here, and I don't know if it's supposed to be covered in this policy or not, but, our board blocks a lot of websites that you're not allowed to go to. So is that supposed to be covered in this policy, or is that just an operational thing? Just so
Thank you, trustee McDonald, and through you, chair. So this is the overarching policy, the umbrella policy that there are procedures, and so the acceptable use of IT resources procedure, which is under this policy, addresses the details specifically of and those procedures were put in place in 2022. So they do address a lot of the things that you're asking about.
Okay, good. Yeah, so I just wanted to know where it is, and that's what I thought it was in the policy, or not in the policy, but it's in the operation procedures that sparked from this policy. So, we do a lot of, I assume, always updating that because, kids are always very inventive in how they can get around those various laws. One of the things that, I don't have TikTok, but he really said to everyone not to have TikTok on their phone. Because the terms of service, if you read it, and I've been researching this and looking at other things, it is pretty extensive, the information they can gather from your phone. So that goes to my concept. So we provide an employee with the phone and then they put TikTok on it. Now it has access to everything that is also part of the board. So is that something that we, regulate the types of apps that are on people's phones?
Thank you, trustee McDonald, through you, chair. Yes, the policy addresses that whether it's your own device or a board provided device, that we have to be in compliance with what is allowed and compliant with board policies. TikTok, as an example, we block TikTok. So TikTok is not allowed on any of our board devices. And if somebody's connected to our network and trying to access TikTok, they're blocked as well. Again, if there's their own device and they go through the cellular network, we have no control over that. But if it is a board device and or connected to the board network and they're accessing TikTok, it's blocked. And the policy addresses as well that if you're connecting to the board network, that you have to maintain through your own device, that it has to be clean out without any viruses, without malware on it, because you'll be infecting the board network as well.
And thank you, through you, Chair. And I appreciate that going to that next segue because, my business, I've run into many customers had ransomware attacks and caught into some grief. And, our company got caught in that scenario of some kind of intrusion. And now we can't even access external emails from my company computer. Have we looked at that? Because that gets problematic for what we do as a business, but serving children, that this is a big concern. Or do we have the proper isolation in place so that we can't be taken down? Because I've been around before your time. I think 10 years ago we had crashed in our IT UPS switch over, crashed the whole system, and it took a week before we were back somewhat operational. And these kind of attacks do the same kind of problems.
Thank you, Trustee McDonald, and through you, Chair. Yes, absolutely. The PDSB were one of the boards that invest the most in cybersecurity, and one of the most advanced out of the 72 boards in Ontario. We are not immune. No organization is immune to attacks, but we're taking every measure possible under the constraints that we certainly are from a resources and financial aspect. So in the K-12 community in Ontario, we are probably the most advanced. I would say we are the most advanced from a cybersecurity perspective.
And I appreciate that we're most advanced, but you know what they say, just by saying that means you're not probably, I just hate putting myself most advanced and then you become the least advanced after an attack. But anyway, I appreciate that. And I'm glad you're on top of that, because I've seen how it's really caused a lot of grief to companies. When attacks come, and since so much of our education is driven, and that's also our payroll, everything. There's so much related to money. So, and the internet and the computers that run the infrastructure. But anyway, thank you very much for your indulgence, Chair, and I approve this policy and look forward to passing it.
Thank you, sir. Moving on to the next speaker of the list, I have Trustee David Green online. Trustee Green, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you to Anton. A quick question, and just looking at the policy and everything, and just listening to the conversation. Does this mean that, for instance, because some of us as trustees, we tend to maybe go to an event at a school or someplace like that, and we just take the picture and we tweet and so forth? Does that mean that going forward, we would need to get the permission of the folks that I know we should anyhow, but does this tighten up that we can't just be snapping and tweeting away like that as we feel like?
Thank you, Trustee Green, and through you, Chair. I will defer to our governance and legal counsel to respond, because that's more a legal than a technology issue.
Thank you for the question, and through you, Mr. Chair. The social media policy also addresses some of those issues, as well as the freedom of information policies that deal with privacy as well. So yes, permission should be sought from students and teachers. There is a media consent that students and teachers do sign at the beginning of the year for use of their images. But if a trustee is actually going to be taking pictures and tweeting them, we must be very careful about revealing any personal information of any of the students. One thing to be very conscious of, and you particularly mentioned an event at the school, if the children had name tags, for example, that's a significant piece of personal information, because if you're tweeting that you're at such and such a school and the child has a name tag on, that's definitely personal information and should not be tweeted. So I suggest that there's an exercise of caution before tweeting images of students out through social media, and refer you to the social media policy as well. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Catherine. Much appreciated. And thank you very much for this policy. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Trustee Green. I see Trustee Clark has his hand on online. Trustee Clark, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. This is a pretty fulsome policy. I want through you, Chair, I'd like to thank Trustee Green for his question. I would add, as a general rule, I avoid taking pictures of students if they're under a certain age. Yeah, that's just as a a personal role for privacy of the child. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your comment, Trustee Clark. Is there any further discussion on this matter? Looking around, seeing no additional hands. I have a couple of quick questions. In the document, there's a section that references an authorized individuals. I'm just going to direct you to that section in a moment. Under section F, expectation of privacy, in the first bullet, or data may be reviewed, monitored, and accessed by authorized individuals. Sorry, page 8 of 13. Monitored and accessed by authorized individuals. Could you please clarify who might authorized individuals be?
Thank you, Chair, and through you. If you look at the same section, bullet point 5, it specifies that the Director of Education and the Associate Director of Operations and Equity of Access and Chief Operating Officer are the only two that can authorize any access to other personal accounts through their approval, if there's an investigation or if there's a requirement of some sort. So those are the only two individuals in the board that would be able to approve that.
Thank you, sir. Understood. So the authorized individual would be the person who has garnered the approval of such said two people. Okay. The other question I had has been answered. One of my colleagues was asking regarding usage on personal devices. I believe it was Trustee Bailey. So I have no additional questions. I do see while I was speaking, Trustee Kay McDonald has her hand up. So I will cede the floor to Trustee Kathy McDonald. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. I was just wondering in terms of monitoring people's phones, as another board was in the news recently, can the board legally monitor people's phones without telling them?
Thank you for the question. I believe this would be best directed to our legal governance officer, Catherine Montague.
Yeah.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you for the question, and through you, Mr. Chair. There are policies and legislation that do permit organizations to monitor board devices. So the answer is yes.
Okay, and would trustees come under that too, as we're not board employees and we sometimes have, we're dealing with the public. So I was just wondering if trustees would fall under that.
Thank you, Trustee McDonald, and through you, Chair. Although, as our General Counsel indicated, that the legislation do allow for certain uses, at Peel, we do not monitor the board devices, board provided devices. We have about 1,300 mobile devices that are provided to staff and trustees. None of them are being monitored, except when we get notified by the individual that they've lost their device, and then the staff would have to go and put that device in lost mode, and that is when it will generate, if the device is still on, it will generate where that location of that device is. And that is only when the person notifies us that the device is stolen or lost. They have to go into the console, they have to put it in lost mode. Once they put it in lost mode, if the device is on and it had not been turned off or the battery been removed, it will point where the device is so that it can help the police to recover it or the individual to recover it.
Okay.
Pardon me, Trustee McDonald. I'm actually, our legal governance officer, Catherine Lotter, I believe, has something to add to that response.
Thank you, and thank you, Chief Information Officer as well. So the answer to the question of can we, is there legislation? The answer is yes. And the answer, as Antoine so correctly pointed out, is do we? And the answer is no. And the specific answer to your question about the trustees' devices being monitored, the answer is no.
The answer is what, sorry?
No, we don't monitor the trustee devices.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there any further discussion on this matter? Seeing none, ahead of us proceeding with the vote, I'll just reread. It is the recommendation that the use of IT resources policy, policy 82, be repealed, and that the digital citizenship policy, policy 78, be replaced with the updated digital citizenship and use of IT resources policy. We'll now proceed to a vote. Do I have someone put this on the floor? I already did. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we have one.
Okay, that carries. Thank you very much. And a special thank you to Chief Information Officer Haroon and Superintendent Smith. Thank you for your presentation. Moving on to our second staff report this evening, I'd like to kindly call upon Coordinating Principal of Curriculum, Instruction, and Assessment, Elizabeth England, to present the following report, the School Council's Policy Recommendation.
Thank you. And we'll be beginning with Superintendent Hoppy. Superintendent Hoppy, I believe, is in the room.
I am. Thank you very much. Good evening, and through you, Chair. It is recommended that the School Council's Policy, Appendix A, be approved with an effective date of April 23rd, 2024. And as this policy has been brought forward to trustees in the previous version, I will now ask Coordinating Principal of England to provide a summary of those changes.
Certainly. Thank you, Superintendent Hoppy, and through you, Chair. After consultation process, including both public and PIC consultations, the following changes were made to the draft School Council policy. First, the area of language clarification. Definitions were added to the policy to clarify language. Upon community consultation, there was a request for language simplification where possible and the inclusion of further definitions. Definitions of anti-racism, equity, anti-oppression, and also of the Parent Involvement Committee are now included in the definitions section. Wording in areas of the policy was also simplified to ensure that terms are understood by the community. Second, there was an addition of a dispute resolution process added to the roles and responsibilities section. Specifically, Area 5.3 of Associate Director, Section D, is indicated to provide support to superintendents of education in exploring solutions to internal disputes of school councils as required. In Section 5.4, Superintendents of Education, Section B indicates that superintendents will provide support as required in responding to internal disputes of school councils. Section C indicates that the Associate Director will be informed of internal school council disputes as required. In addition to the role of school council, there's already a small section of conflict resolution in Section 5.5H in the role of the principal. In response to community consultation, another section, Section B, was added, which was to communicate the value and role of school councils within the local school community to encourage community advocacy and engagement. And the third section was the addition of Section 5.7 in roles and responsibilities. And there was a section added to outline the roles and responsibilities of the Parent Involvement Committee, which is in alignment with Ontario Regulation 612.00, Sections 3, 27, and 28 of the regulation. And the section for the Parent Involvement Committee reads A, that they will communicate and support school councils of schools of the board. B, they will provide information and advice on parent engagement to the board. C, they will undertake activities to help parents of pupils of the board support their children's learning at home and at school. D, they will communicate information from the ministry to school councils of schools of the board and to parents of pupils of the board. E, to work with school councils of schools of the board and through the board's director of education with employees of the board to 1, share effective practices to help engage parents, especially parents who may find engagement challenging in their children's learning. 2, identify and reduce barriers to parent engagement. 3, help ensure that schools of the board create welcoming environments for parents of its pupils. And 4, develop skills, and acquire knowledge that will assist in the Parent Involvement Committee and school councils of the board with their work. So those points were all garnered from the consultation process and put into the draft policy, which you have before you this evening. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Coordinating Principal England and Superintendent Hoppy for your presentation. Definitely a welcome policy to have come before the board. May I please ask someone to put this recommendation on the floor for approval?
I will.
Thank you very much, Trustee McDonald, Trustee K. McDonald, and may I have a seconder? Trustee Clark, thank you very much. Okay, I will now open this. I will now bring this to the floor for discussion. Please raise your hand if you would like to be recognized before speaking, and once recognized, please state your name and we'll proceed with your comments or questions. Okay, is there any further discussion? Any questions at all? Not seeing any. We will now proceed with a vote. And it is the recommendation that the school council's policy Appendix A be approved with an effective date of April 23rd, 2024. All those in favor? The motion is passed. Moving on to our third staff report, I'd like to please call upon our legal governance officer, Catherine Lockyer, to present the recommendation regarding Director of Education selection and performance appraisals.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. The recommendation before you this evening is that the following policies and procedures are recommended for approval by the Board of Trustees. 1, Director of Education selection policy. 2, selection of a Director of Education procedure. 3, Director of Education performance appraisal policy. And 4, Director of Education performance appraisal procedure. The Education Act provides that every school board must employ a Director of Education. The Act also provides that each board shall establish a committee responsible for conducting a performance appraisal of the Director of Education. It is best practice from the perspective of consistency, accountability, and transparency to have a policy and procedure to address the selection, also known as hiring, of a Director of Education and the annual appraisal of the Director of Education. With a policy and accompanying procedures in place, there are clear expectations and roles and responsibilities established. This leads to consistency and fairness in the process of both selection and appraisal of the Director of Education. As it is one of the most important functions of the board to select or hire the Director of Education, and one of the board's obligations to provide an annual appraisal of the Director of Education, we are presenting both the policies and procedures to this committee and ultimately to the board for approval. While typically procedures are approved by the Director of Education through Directors' Council, in this instance, as they are the procedures that the board will be required to implement and follow, it is for the board to actually approve the policy and the procedures. The policies and procedures were drafted after an extensive review of other board policies and procedures to ensure that we are in line with industry standards and best practices, as well as legislative requirements. You did receive an updated version of the policies and procedures on Monday this week. The only change from the ones that were circulated to you on Friday was to change a role from the Executive Lead of Human Resources to the Chief Operating Officer, who has oversight of human resources. Everything else remained the same. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you kindly for your presentation. May I please ask someone to put this recommendation on the floor for approval? Trustee Carla Bailey, and a seconder, please. Trustee B. McDonald, thank you very much. I'll now open the floor for discussion. Please raise your hand and wait to be recognized before speaking. And once recognized, please state your name and proceed with your comments and questions. Trustee Will Davies, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you so much for having this policy. It's about time. Just one quick comment. On page 4 there, we have after the committee has made the recommendation to the board and they need 2/3, they need 2/3 majority. I was wondering if that couldn't be by a written ballot so that, you know, if it's passed and it's not unanimous, the new director doesn't know that. And all they know is, hey, I got the job. And you know, just the show of hands, you have something going around the table and you know, this person does like this person didn't, and that could get bad, and I just don't want that. Thanks.
Thank you for the question, and through you, Mr. Chair. If it is the will of the committee to amend the procedure and policy to reflect that the vote for hiring or selection of a director is done by secret ballot, that would be a relatively easy amendment and could be added to the policy for clarity, if it's the will of the committee to add that.
Thank you. Thank you, Catherine. So I'm looking to members of the committee, if they've heard Trustee Davies's point, if they have any interest in putting forward a motion on the floor to have that policy amended. So I'll just give a few seconds to my colleagues on the committee to ponder that. Let's just give them a few seconds here. I'll also extend the invitation to ask questions. If folks have any questions of clarification for Trustee Davies's point, I think that would be a great time. So Trustee B. McDonald.
Just a kind of point where shouldn't the process be that if he wants to change, he puts a motion and then.
Committee. That's why I asked.
Oh, you're not on the committee?
No, sir. No.
Okay, so then, okay, yeah, okay, right, and so. Can I ask you a question? Can I ask? So, what, you know, because I've been through many a selection, what is the concern about secret versus our normal way of voting, which the only secret ballot we do have is chair and vice chair?
Right, and I just wanted sort of the same positive attitude to go through. All the chair knows is, hey, I made it. And I just wanted that to be for the new director as well. I don't ever want it to get out that, hey, these 4 people didn't vote for you. These 8 did. Watch out for them. That's all. That's the only point I'm trying to make. I just want everything to be positive, upbeat. Hey, we got a new director. Let's go. And we're a united board on it.
So may I ask, through you, Chair Governance, in your survey of other boards, did you find anything around that?
Thank you for the question. Through you, Mr. Chair. I did not notice anything particular about secret voting, but I do appreciate the sentiment. And there is the example of a board chair and vice chair with the same reason. There would be nothing untoward about it. There is, you know, an element of governance about being accountable for your individual decisions, but there's also, given the sensitivity of the position, there's also some merit to what Trustee Davies is proposing. So it really is, it's a will of the committee.
So I'll put the motion on the floor, but before we get the motion correct, who's going to count? Because normally we bring scrutineers in there, and I don't think we should be doing that. That's my feeling. I think we should just have the vice chair and chair to do that, but I don't know. What do you recommend in your?
Given that we've already included the can't remember his full title, but Jess Paul's position in the policy and procedure, I would suggest that would be the correct person to count the votes.
Okay.
As a screw, yeah.
Okay. Okay. So I'd like to put a motion on the floor to have amend the policy in front of us to reflect the change to have a secret ballot and counted by the appropriate appointed person.
Thank you very much, Trustee P. McDonald. For the speakers online that have legacy hands, I've noted the order of speakers. If you could please let me know if you'd like to second this motion. We do need a seconder. So I know you have legacy hands from being in order of speaking. Oh, thank you, Trustee Clark. All in favor of the motion?
No, so now we get to talk about.
Oh, pardon me. Apologies. We will now open the floor for comments and questions on the motion before us.
Yeah, thank you. Since it's my motion, I'll speak first. And I appreciate that, Chair. And I don't have much to say. I think Will said it well. And I appreciate the input we got from the governance council on this. So I hope trustees will approve this motion and we can move forward with the policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee B. McDonald. I see Trustee K. McDonald has her hand up. Trustee K. McDonald, the floor is yours. Trustee Kathy McDonald, just
Yes,
checking
hi,
again.
sorry, yeah. I was originally, I wanted to second the motion, so I am supporting the motion. But in terms of the way the motion reads, is it finalized in the motion who counts it? Because I think it's it should be a totally independent person of the board that counts the ballots.
Thank you, Trustee McDonald. I'll ask our legal governance officer, Catherine Lockyer, to clarify. I believe she touched on this a moment earlier, but she's just going to check now and she'll clarify.
Thank you for your question, and through you, Mr. Chair, what the proposal in the motion is that the position of Associate Director, Operations and Equity of Access and Chief Operating Officer be the person who is independent from the trustees, and also the really the only staff person that is involved at all with the selection or appraisal of the Director of Education. I believe and of course the mover of the motion can speak to it, but I believe that the concern was not to bring in yet another staff person and to keep the circle of knowledge outside of the trustees very close. And that is why the counting or the scrutineer for the election would be the Chief Operating Officer, Associate Director. Currently.
Okay, so so that's a question then. Why don't we employ that method when we are voting for chair and vice chair?
Thank you, and for the question, and through you, Mr. Chair, I believe we don't do that because of there's no reporting relationship with the internal audit and the trustees. Rather, it's through the Director of Education. And so it's the nature of the employment as opposed to the nature of an election that creates the difference. That's my understanding of why that's that recommendation.
Okay. Thank you very much. Is there any further discussion on this? Trustee Joe Promoli, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank through you, Chair. I wanted to thank my colleague Trustee Davies for this thought on this. I think this is great perspective, and given the sensitivity of this, I think this is a great adjustment to this policy and the way that we move forward on it. And I'm a big fan of transparency on the decisions that we make, but this is one of those places where that we need to make sure that we're protecting the people that we're working with. So I think the relationships going forward. So thank you, Trustee Davies. And I can't vote because I'm not on this committee, but yeah, I think this is great. So here we go.
Thank you, Trustee Promoli. If we don't have any further discussion on this motion, I'd like to call it to a vote, please, on the amendment. So this is just a vote on the amendment that Trustee B. McDonald brought forward following the comment from Trustee Will Davies. So I'll now call it to a vote. All those in favor, please say aye or put up your hand.
Aye.
The amendment motion has passed. So just bringing this back to the policy, we had the recommendation following policies and procedures, that the following policies and procedures are recommended for approval as amended by the Board of Trustees, the Director of Education Selection Policy, Appendix A, selection of a Director of Education Procedure, Appendix B, Director of Education Performance Appraisal Policy, Appendix C, Director of Education Performance Appraisal Procedure, Appendix D. Do we have any questions on this policy or on the appendices of the policy before us? Seeing none, we will now proceed to a vote. Do we have to begin? Oh, my apologies. My apologies. We did not have a mover and a seconder for this. Could I please have someone move this? Thank you, Trustee Clark and B. McDonald for seconding. We don't have any discussion. All those in favor? Motion is passed. Thank you very much. Moving on to our fourth staff report this evening, I'd like to again call upon our legal governance officer, Catherine Lockyer, to please present the trustee code of conduct policy for information only.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. Ontario Regulation 24618 requires every school to have a code of conduct for trustees. Every school board, sorry. The code of conduct must be reviewed at least every 4 years. The current code of conduct was approved by the supervisor in October 2022. While I appreciate that it has not been 4 years since the last code of conduct was approved, it is important that each trustee have their say in the trustee code of conduct now that supervision has been lifted. Further, you have been working with the existing code of conduct for more than a year, and as such, there may be revisions that may need to be made for the code of conduct to reflect the needs of this particular board. The current code of conduct was largely based on OSPA's template with a few modifications. A review of the code of conduct will provide the opportunity to refresh the code of conduct and make any necessary updates or changes to reflect current trends, best practices, and any particularities to Peel, with the added advantage of being legislatively proactive for the required review. I have provided the code of conduct to the integrity commissioners for their input and comment as well. Having worked with the code of conduct, they will undoubtedly have some comments about the effectiveness and scope of the code of conduct, as well as some comments about the emphasis that may be necessary for the code of conduct to be as effective as possible. I'm open to take any comments now about the code of conduct and would also welcome feedback via email. Once all commentary has been gathered and commentary from the integrity commissioner has been gathered, we will return to this committee for a review of the draft code of conduct. I'm also open to discussion if there are others or other groups that you would like to consult in connection with the code of conduct and at what stage you would like that consultation. For example, do you want some staff or union engagement at this stage or at the stage of a refreshed draft? You can provide me with your comments now on that or via email as well. This is an important document that is a pivotal component of accountability and good governance, and should be given the time and consideration necessary to have a solid and responsive document. I'm happy to take any questions or comments.
Thank you kindly for the presentation, Legal Governance Officer Catherine Lockyer. I think this is very welcome before our committee this evening. May I please ask someone to put this on the floor for receipt? Thank you, Trustee B. McDonald. I'd like to now open the floor. Oh, sorry, a seconder. Could I ask someone to please second the motion? Thank you, Trustee Clark. I'll now move this to the floor for discussion. Please raise your hand and wait to be recognized before speaking. The floor is open for questions. Trustee B. McDonald, floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, through you, Chair. So I appreciate you bringing this opportunity, and I'm just trying to work through some logistics that I'm seeing in the execution of the informal and formal complaint process. I think if I understand it correctly, before a trustee files an informal complaint, they have to contact the trustee that they feel that there was an infringement on based on the code of conduct. I find that a situation where if a person feels that, let's say they're unsafe or they feel they're being bullied or of that kind of nature, it puts that trustee into who's going to file that informal complaint in a bad place. So my recommendation is formal or informal, a trustee can file a complaint regardless of having to speak to the person offending. I don't think that really helps the process. And I think it makes it more fair, especially as I said, if someone feels like they're being bullied or something of that nature.
Thank you for that comment. So noted.
Thank you. And I'll continue on. So the next concern I have is around, the relationship with trustees and staff. And I'm going to go through a long process to describe it. Hope I describe it well. And I know if it's something you look at, you'll put it in the right words and what have you. But my premise is that staff, if they feel that trustees have infringed on their I shouldn't say rights, but infringed on them based on what the code of conduct clearly states as professional behavior and all the associated other items in the code of conduct, that they feel that they've been treated unfairly through that, through a, whatever process that engagement is. Could be email, could be, face to face, et cetera, that they should have the opportunity to file an informal complaint, not a formal complaint. That only should be done by trustees. And my understanding, formal complaint is, and you can correct me if wrong, but formal complaint was something that then gets the integrity commissioner file a report in front of trustees with potential recommendations for actions. So an informal complaint, to my understanding, is an integrity commissioner trying to work with the two parties to work out a resolution, if there is, and if there is no resolution, there is no resolution, if I understand. So it's my my belief that if staff feel that a trustee, violated the code of conduct in reference to them, that they should file that informal complaint. That informal complaint process will be followed just as it is. But I'd like to also add to the informal complaint process, it should be an anonymous process, that the person who files it should be aware of it. The trustee who's being on the complaint is being lodged against, unless it can't be held confidential, I think should be held confidential who's filing the complaint on an informal basis. When we go to formal, I think that's a different story. But I think to protect someone who again feels like there could be retribution through filing a complaint, or through a process of being bullied or whatever that complaint may be, I think it would be nice. However, that all being said, if it's an interaction between two individuals, you can't get around keeping that confidential. But if it can be, it can be. But that report, that informal report, I'm not quite sure the reporting of that when, let's say, resolutions have, the integrity commissioner does what they do, and it comes to an end, meaning that they've resolved it, they both agreed or they disagree, type of stuff. I see this as an HR matter, so I really think that should be held confidential. And I'm open to your suggestion as legal counsel, but I think that should be held confidential, and not other people should not be made aware of that complaint. Even when it comes to integrity commissioner doing a report, at the end of the year, I've had, all these complaints, and you're not listening. No, you can just say, I had 2 informal complaints.
Thank you for the comment, and through you, Mr. Chair, I can comment now. I was going to suggest the exact thing that you just commented on. In the integrity commissioner is required annually to provide a report, and that report could have non-identifying information, just aggregate information, such as we had 7 informal complaints. It's possible that report could be further broken down, 7 informal complaints, 3 of which were from staff, 4 of which were from trustees, or we could leave it at the high level of just plain seven informal complaints.
My belief is high level.
High level.
Because this is an HR matter, if we wanted to break that down, that should be an in-committee report in which we should hear about that. I think that's the only place I would agree to have that. Not saying I'd do it. I'm just saying that would be the only place, because I really think it's a personnel matter when we start talking about staff and trustees.
Thank you for the comment, and through you, Mr. Chair. I tend to agree, because the hope, of course, is that there'll be few of these. And when you start to have numbers that are small broken down, the higher the probability of incidents being identifiable, which does, take away a bit from the shroud of anonymity.
Correct.
So the higher the aggregate is likely, the better. That can also be amended next go around if you see that there are significant numbers and there does need to be something done at a different level, or perhaps with different consequences. So
now,
as a step measure. Thank you.
Now, the only concern I have is, we're putting this in there, it's new. And so maybe I don't want to lock it all the way where I would see it should go. Maybe we do a trial at this level, but maybe the next step, if we can go there, we do, the director and the chair need to know if there is, if there are challenges faced between staff and trustees. And that could be through a report in committee because it's referring to maybe so many of this. But you know, if we have a trustee who is really causing a lot of informal complaints, no trustee will never hear about it. I don't think the chair should be, you know, in my experience, the chair shouldn't be involved in any of those conversations, right? Because we're going to give it to the integrity commissioner and the chair does the chair stuff. But I worry about if there is a trustee who keeps doing the same thing to different people and will not, agree to resolve it and et cetera, then there needs to be an escalation process or it has to be brought to the attention of someone. But I don't know how to deal with that at this point in time. So I'm just putting it out there. Maybe that's a next iteration of the code of conduct.
Thank you for the comment, and through you, Mr. Chair, if I may ask a question of Trustee McDonald. If there are no consequences to an informal, or there's no real outcome to informal, is it a consideration that the Director of Education may be advised from an employment perspective? You've greatly identified that in issues related to trustees and staff, there is that second side, the staff side of that. Is it possible that the Director of Education could be provided with perhaps even a summary report from the Integrity Commissioner? So if there's any steps that the Director of Education should take as an employer, that those steps could be taken for the benefit of the responsibilities and obligations that the director has as an employee or employer rather, for a safe and healthy workplace.
Right. Okay. And you know, and then he or she has it as a director. But well, again, the next step we'll figure out if they want to talk to the chair, and that's the other concern. And when do we close that loop? Is at the next revision and see, you know, maybe I'm just overstepped, but I think we all understand, or you understand what I'm trying to get at is if there's situations where staff feel that they're not professionally dealt with, that we need to deal with it. And that report, as you said, summary report to the director, I think is a good way to feel that they follow the process and they got the opportunity. And then the director can say, well, I'm sorry, at this point in time, there's nothing more we can do now. But, you know, we can then work, as you said, as an employer to help solve the problem from our side. I like that. I like that thinking.
Thank you for the comment. I've noted. Thank you.
And let me see if that's the last item.
Happy to come back.
Yeah, come back. But thank you so much, Chair, for your diligence through all that process.
Thank you, Trustee B. McDonald. I think we'll move on. I see Trustee David Green's hand is up online. Trustee Green, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Trustee McDonald, for that conversation and putting those forward, because myself, I think we have to find a way in which basically the chair doesn't become the police, because many times as chair, I have been put in very, I would say, uncomfortable position wherein that staff has brought complaint to me about trustee behaviors, and how, and it put me in a place to have those courageous conversation with my colleagues. And whether I am the chair or somebody else is the chair, I think it's really put you in a very uncomfortable position. Sometimes I may have a conversation with somebody and it may go over well, it may not go over well. And I don't want to, for the time that I'm in this position, I don't want to be the person that is policing trustees when staff bring things to my attention. So there should be a way that staff able to file that informal complaint, and the integrity commissioner take it from there, and maybe just bring back the as Brad said, a report at some time. But we have to find a way. So I'm just thinking, as we think this through, we look at maybe different methodology or strategies that we may be able to use to ensure that at the end of the day, we are ensuring that yes, people are being heard, their voice have been heard and listened to. But basically not coming from a place where in that you find that okay, you got to go out there now, you got to have these conversation, and as I said, put you in a very very uncomfortable position. And if I was to be honest, there is a complaint that came from staff, and they're still sitting in my inbox, and I haven't really, because I just trying to avoid the animosity or maybe friction or so forth, and just to keep us moving forward. So thank you Brad for this conversation. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Green. We have Trustee Kathy McDonald online with her hand up as well. Trustee Kathy McDonald, if you have any questions, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. And I actually have more comment than a question. So, and I think I have a question after, but I welcome the fact that there is, I think, a process involved, and I heard Council Lockyer with regards to some mechanism so that the Director of Education can address many informal complaints coming forward. Because I too also get staff coming forward with complaints, and I know it's because in terms of, or perhaps for some of them, it feels like a comfort level of who they want to speak with, but I think there should be a formal process for that. However, I don't think it should, like the chair should be part of the discussions for two reasons. Because one, if staff are going to complain, I think they need to feel comfortable that they can make their complaint and it will be dealt with. And especially if the person who they're making the complaint about is the chair, whoever he or she may be. So I think to have a process where staff feels comfortable to bring forward their concern, I think, and in a safe environment, I think that's very important part of the process. So I look forward to, I guess, some kind of, I guess, amendment or adjustment to the policy. Now, I'm just thinking out loud based on the discussion heard, is how long, let's say, do you need a motion to bring forward the change to such a policy, or can staff just bring forward the motion and then bring forward the policy and then bring it here to be approved? Or do you need a motion on the floor for that?
Thank you for your comments and questions, Trustee McDonald, and through you, Mr. Chair. With regard to your first set of comments, those are well heard, and I've made note of the comments and agree about staff having the ability to be able to provide those complaints in a safe and comfortable environment so that there isn't any undue pressure or fear of reprisal. So thank you for those comments. In connection with your second point in question, the purpose of this discussion today is to bring forward the comments. And as I said, the Integrity Commissioner also has the Code of Conduct for their review. We will definitely be bringing back an updated trustee code of conduct to this committee at some point once we've had all comments from both this committee and all trustees. When this goes to the board in the minutes for information, and all trustees were circulated with the committee agenda and this report. And a further question for comments that I welcome from all of the trustees here, as well as all of the board, are what is your input that you're looking for from consultation perspective? And that will affect the timing, of course, because we want to make sure that we have everyone's comments accounted for in the drafts, so that we have a fulsome draft that's supportable by all of the board.
So could I just make a quick comment based on what you said in terms of, I think it would be great to meet one-on-one with the integrity commissioners. Like, I think each individual trustee to kind of give their feedback and thoughts too. And it would be good to have you as part of the discussion, I would imagine, if you are okay with that too.
Thank you very much for that comment, and through you, Mr. Chair, I do actually have a meeting set up next week with the Integrity Commissioner, and I will be asking about their recommended procedure for that, and will certainly raise that suggestion to them as a distinct possibility. That is certainly something that I have experience with in my past life, doing codes of conduct for elected officials. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If there's no further comment on the matter, I have a couple of questions myself, but I'll just wait to see if any of my colleagues would like to ask anything before I go ahead. Not seeing any hands. Okay. My question would be to Trustee B. McDonald's point. I hope I didn't misunderstand, but we were talking about informal resolution. So please, Catherine, if you could correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is trustee v. trustee, let's say there's an issue where a trustee might think that, someone has violated the code of conduct. It's my understanding that if they, if you go to the integrity commissioner, the first option that the integrity commissioner tells you is, hey, here's some guidance, and they recommend the informal resolution. I think personally, the informal resolution is quite helpful because it offers time, breathing room to reassess what happened. You get a little bit of advice from the integrity commissioner, and then you can have a colloquial conversation with the person whom you think may have, stepped out of line of the conduct, and it allows the two of you to engage in a respectful conversation where you can come to a private agreement. And I think it helps foster, relationship building. So Trustee B. McDonald, you were saying, and I hope I didn't understand, but something along the lines of they shouldn't have that option, or that shouldn't be a provision?
No, sorry, I think so. In the provision right now, if I were going to do an informal complaint, I have to contact the trustee that I have the challenge with before filing the informal. So what I'm saying is that if I feel that, that there's a code of conduct violation against me, that I can go directly to the integrity commissioner and file that. But to answer your other point, though, I think you bring into the point is it also brings the severity of the code. Like if it's just, you felt that, your words were inappropriate and I interpreted one way and another, that's when I think, building relationship. But if it's, if it's an egregious kind of conduct where there's something really serious, like let's say something happens in public where they're really slandering you, et cetera, then I don't think that's an intended attention. And maybe I said that can go directly to a formal, which the process, I believe, allows you to do. But I'm just saying, the informal, as you said, is rightfully the best way to resolve things, to try to build a relationship. But sometimes the severity of the incident hence goes to formal, where it calls in front of all trustees, which they get to vote on recommendation if there are any recommendations. Oh, that's clarifies it.
Thank you, Trustee B. McDonald. So I'll ask Catherine, our legal governance officer, Catherine Lockyer, to clarify. So the point I'm kind of confused about, and Trustee B. McDonald's clarification helped. So the way I understand this is the trustee code of conduct policy is suggesting, I understand it now, if you would like, so I think what I'm understanding is Trustee B. McDonald is saying that the language should be, if you'd like to go directly to a formal complaint, that you not need to go through the informal process. But should you, of your own judgment, think, the integrity commissioner is always going to counsel us, when they do counsel informal, that option still exists. I just underscore, I'm a very big supporter of the informal option. I think that working together to find a private solution is often best amongst relationship building, but I understand your point. Please.
Thank you for the comments and through you, Mr. Chair. The current complaint process indicates that trustees are encouraged to use informal means on their own first, and also says that through that informal process amongst the trustees themselves, they can ask for the assistance of the integrity commissioner or the chair of the board in that process. It also goes on to say under the formal complaints that if the trustee has reasonable grounds, they can go straight to a formal complaint. One of the issues in determining reasonableness is often with the guidance and support of the integrity commissioner. So I think that what I'm hearing is that there needs to be some clarity in those processes, because right now it just feels like it's a little bit circuitous, and perhaps we just need some further clarity in the actual process for both informal and formal, and how you get from one to the other, if you need to get from one to the other, and different gradations of the informal formal process. I think that's what
Can I add to that point? Because so maybe part of that process is, maybe I decide to go right to formal, but the integrity commissioner reviews it and says, hey, Brad, I appreciate this, but really, I strongly recommend going through the informal. So I think they're the best arbiter of that. But I can assume the ultimate decision would be me. So if I said, no, I want to go formal, then in her report, she'll go, after maybe more investigation, I could still say, I think this is informal, and there hence no recommendation or just mediation, which would happen maybe in informal. Or if after further guess, oh no, this is a grievous, and here's my recommendations of action that the trustees must take action on or vote on, and if decide not to.
Thank you for that further clarification, and through you, Mr. Chair. Absolutely, that can be clarified as well. And that may also be reflected if there is a trustee who, I don't want to use the word insists, but persists in the formal complaint despite the advice of the integrity commissioner. That may be reflected in the integrity commissioner's report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And then my only other comment, when we were talking about trustee v staff, so I understood, trustee v staff, there seems to be an issue where staff are under the impression that the trustee in question has violated the code of conduct. So I understand that the chairman of the board or chairperson of the board is not involved in that conversation. To trustee Green's point, I think it's wise to not have the chairperson have to police staff. I think that puts the chairperson in an awkward spot. So I understand this policy outlines staff member files the informal complaint. To trustee B. McDonald's point, I appreciate that those are private staff matter complaints. But I also wanted to add to this, trustees are also able to hold each other to account. So in the instance where a staff member maybe files 5, 6, 7, 8 complaints against that one trustee, as it stands now, the trustee, I think, and hoping Catherine can clarify this, could file a complaint on the behavior of a colleague towards staff.
If they're witness to it,
Yeah.
Thank you for the comment, and through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, currently, under the current code, a trustee would have to be the one that would report under a formal complaint to the IC regarding another trustee. And that is one of the sort of perhaps stumbling blocks for staff having access to the integrity commissioner, in that staff would have to go to another trustee, make the case, a compelling case, and have that trustee lodge a complaint against their colleague, a fellow trustee. So it is, I would suggest, not common for staff to go to a trustee and make their case to have that trustee report another trustee. It puts staff in a very difficult position.
I understand. That clarification is welcome. I have no additional questions, but I see trustee David Green has his hand up. Trustee David Green, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, Chair, the comment I made was not, I didn't want to police staff. I don't want to police my colleagues. And that is the thing, because the complaints that I receive is not against staff. It's against my colleagues. And as I said, I have had conversation with some of my colleagues, and then there's others that I feel very uncomfortable, so they're still sitting in my inbox. So, as I said, for the time that I'm in this role, I don't want to be doing that, and I don't think any previous chair should be put in that situation, because it feels very uncomfortable. Thanks.
Thank you, Trustee Green. That's my fault. I misspoke. I had understood that as well. You don't want to have to police your colleagues, and I think that's a very fair comment to whomever becomes the chairperson, whether it's yourself or other people. I think that's a very fair comment. So my apologies for misspeaking, but that's absolutely right. Okay, I will ask again, is there any further discussion on this matter, folks? I see Trustee Will Davies has his hand up. The floor is yours, sir.
Just a quick comment that perhaps a trustee staff policy, engagement policy might alleviate some of these complaints. And so at least there's a set of rules, and then we clearly know that they've been broken. Thanks.
Thank you for your comment. And through you, Mr. Chair, as you may recall, there has been trustee staff relations policies before this committee and actually before the board historically. And perhaps that comment is well taken, and perhaps some elements from that policy can be framed into the trustee code of conduct that would help to facilitate the comments regarding staff having direct access to the integrity commissioner. So thank you for that comment.
Okay, folks, I don't think there's any more discussion on this matter. Okay, if not, we will now proceed to a vote. This was already moved and seconded. So I'd like to ask all those in favor to please say aye or raise your hand. Okay. Yeah, okay, now the motion has passed.
It's not actually a motion.
Sorry.
Oh, receive, okay.
Thank you. So the motion to receive has passed. Okay, moving to our fifth item on the list. I'd like to again call upon our legal governance officer, Ms. Kathleen Lockyer, to please present the Governance and Policy Committee Terms of Reference for recommendation.
Thank you very much, and through you, Mr. Chair. This is before you this evening with the recommendation that the Governance and Policy Committee Terms of Reference as circulated be approved by the board and replace the governance directives for the Governance and Policy Committee. As you are all aware, the procedure bylaw was approved at the January board meeting. One of the provisions of the procedure bylaw is that each committee would have terms of reference specific to the committee and approved by the committee. Before you this evening is a draft of the terms of reference for the Governance and Policy Committee. These terms of reference generally align with the previous governance directive for the committee. And just for information, all of the committees are having this same report, find and replace with the different committee names so that there will be consistency across all of the standing committees. Thank you, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Legal Governance Officer Kathleen Lockyer, may I please ask someone to put this recommendation on the floor for approval? Trustee B. McDonald, seconder, Trustee Jeff Clark, thank you very much. Okay, I will ask folks if there are any questions. I see Trustee B. McDonald's got his hand up. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Chair. So on the second page of your governance, you have page references, page 55 of 81. At the top, right in the appendix. Yeah, right there.
My apologies, and through you, Mr. Chair, that's a typo. It was a cut and paste, and I picked up the page number. That's my fault. I apologize. That can just be deleted.
Yeah.
It's just a page. It's a page reference that was inappropriately.
Normally, I don't catch these things, but
thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Trustee B. McDonald, for that comment. Are there any other questions, folks? Seeing none. The recommendation before us is that the Governance and Policy Committee terms of reference as attached as Appendix 1 be approved by the board and replace the governance directives for the Governance and Policy Committee. Now I'll be moving forward to a vote. If I could have folks please raise their hand or say aye. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion has passed. Thank you very much, Legal Governance Officer Catherine Lockyer, for all of your work and all of your work this evening. Moving to our next item, Communications 8.1. We have a response to Ms. Valentina Jorge in the package tonight for our information. We will now be moving to the next section of our meeting, which is trustee motions for consideration. And there are no trustee motions for consideration before us this evening. So we'll be moving to section 10 of the agenda, trustee notices of motion, and under section 10.1, we have a notice of motion, student cell phone use in schools submitted by trustee B. McDonald.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to mention the motion. Be it resolved that the Peel District School Board staff provide a report to the Governance and Policy Committee before the end of June 2024 on student cell phone use in schools.
Thank you very much, trustee B. McDonald. I believe, look to our governance officer, Catherine Lockyer. I believe I need someone to put this on the floor. Yes.
Thank you for the question. Then through you, no, it's a notice of motion. So it's brought to the attention of this committee as well as the public and the rest of the trustees through the live stream. And this motion will appear at the next Governance and Policy Committee meeting under number 9, trustee motions for consideration. And at that time, it'll be moved and seconded, and there'll be the discussion on the motion at that time. Thank you.
Thank you kindly for providing that clarification. If there is no further business this evening, may I please have a motion to adjourn? Trustee B. McDonald, seconded by trustee Dave Clark. Thank you, folks. Thank you very much. And again, a special thank you to trustee B. McDonald for allowing me the opportunity to chair this evening's meeting. I hope you all have a wonderful night and a good weekend.